And we're thrilled to have Academy Award-winning actor George Chakiris with us here tonight. He'll be here for Q&A afterwards with theater critic and historian and author Peter Filichia, so that should be a special treat. Just a note, first off, please turn off your cell phones. We really want that full cinematic experience that they had in 1961. Additionally, traditionally there's an intermission in this film, but because it's 2.5 hours, we're cutting the intermission. It's only going to be like a minute or so. If you feel like dashing off to the restroom, you can, but it'll be a very slight pause in the film. And tonight, as you may have seen, and as you may have noted when you purchased tickets, a portion of the proceeds are going to benefit George's favorite charity, which is the Charge Syndrome Foundation, which he'll talk about later on. And there are some items available for purchase out there that will, portion of the proceeds from that will go to the charity. And George will be signing afterwards as well if you'd like to give a little bit of a donation, and he'll sign some pictures. So once the Q&A finishes this evening, if you could all head out to the lobby, he'll be out there afterwards. So stick around and he'll do that. And I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Leslie Ann Bennett, who helped put this event on, and it was all her idea. So welcome, Leslie.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. This is what we call a passion project, something that I have been wanting to do for a very long time. It's in fact to not just honor those people who introduce young people to musical theater, but also to pay homage to those films that resonate with generations of people. And this particular film does that, I think more so than many other films do. And this started back in March as a legacy to my father, who taught and directed musicals throughout my life and introduced me to West Side Story when I was a very young girl. And so it is a very big privilege and an honor to be here tonight to not only watch West Side Story with you on the big screen, it was meant to be seen with this fabulous score, but also to have George here. We're very honored to have you here.
I'd now have the absolute pleasure of welcoming our guests to the stage, our moderator for this evening, Peter Filichia, and our very special guest, George Chakiris. Nope. Welcome, George. And Peter is making his way up.
Okay. Well, every time I see this, I have the same. I'm so moved by this film and the beautiful story. Hi. Natalie, the last scene, there's different lines pop out at me at different times. I love when Tony is down in the cellar waiting to get money from Doc, and Doc finally comes down after Anita has gone. And one of the lines that Doc has is like, "Is that what we have to do? Is that what we have to do like you all do? Bust like a hot water pipe?" I don't know. It's such a descriptive line, isn't it? Anyway, so I noticed that one tonight.
So are you ready to rumble?
Sure.
We have with us the gentleman who starred as Riff in West Side Story. You fell into my trap. Because way back when, you were Riff in the London production, weren't you?
Yeah. I got to play Riff in the London company for a year and a half. Directed by Jerome Robbins, choreographed by Jerome Robbins, conceived by Jerome Robbins. He started the whole thing. So it was a great time. I was very lucky,
All right, so were you the original in the London production?
Well, no, there was the Broadway.
All set there,
first.
but when they went to London, you were the first one to play Riff in London.
Yeah, that's right. That was the first time British Actors Equity allowed, I think, an entire American cast to come over and originate that show. When each of us left, then we had to be replaced by somebody from English Actors Equity. But yeah, I was the original Riff in that production.
Not bad for a boy from Norwood, Ohio, huh? Right?
Not bad at all. I was really lucky. Yeah.
Now, one of the most pungent lines you have in this movie is, "In America, nothing is impossible," and of course you're being wonderfully sarcastic when you say it. But the dreams that didn't come true for Bernardo did come true for you, didn't they?
Well, how do you mean?
Well, a boy from Norwood, Ohio. I can't imagine there are many Oscar winners from Norwood, Ohio, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, one of the things that occurred to me in watching this film too is my parents were immigrants from the old country, not from. So my brothers and sisters and I are first generation, and so we were blessed that they came over when they did. You know.
A lot of kids in your family, right? Many children?
I'm sorry?
In your family, there were many children, right?
Yeah, there were 7 of us, actually 8. 4 boys and 4 girls. Yeah, there were quite a few.
And
And
Chakiris,
which was great, by the way.
that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Chakiris is the real name?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, it is, yeah.
Does it mean something in Turkish? Does it mean future Oscar winner? Or,
If it does, I don't know. I should know, shouldn't I? But I don't know, yeah.
All right, take us back to auditioning for this. When did you first hear there was something called West Side Story?
I had been working as a chorus dancer in Hollywood movie musicals in the early 50s and up to 1957, 57. And work had pretty much dried up for dancers in Los Angeles because of television. And those musicals, the great movie musicals, kind of stopped. So I got a one-way ticket to New York, having no idea what I was going to be doing there, only that I knew I had to make a change. And some friends of mine put me up on the couch in their living room, so I had a place to stay. But one of them was a dancer, and the other one worked for Roger L. Stevens, who was one of the producers of West Side Story in the theater in New York. So they knew everything that was going on. And one of the things that was going on was Jerome Robbins, the genius choreographer and other things as well, was auditioning people to replace whoever left the New York company and to form the London company. So within a month or something like that of being here, I had the great good luck to audition for Jerry 3 times, but that's how I got cast by Jerry in the London company. Yeah.
All right, so you played Riff, you played Bernardo. Do you only take roles where you die at the end of the first act? Is this what did you do during the second act when you had nothing to do on stage? You were just waiting for your curtain call. What did you do? Did you pay bills?
Well, you know, in the second half, you know, because in the theater version, the rumble happens. The first act ends with the rumble, so we're dead. But also in the theater version, and there's the beautiful Somewhere ballet, which is really gorgeous. So we just had to be on stage for a short while for that. But basically, you know, we're waiting to. It was time to do the curtain call.
Now, I know that you've become a jewelry designer. Did you design any jewelry during that time when you had nothing to do during the second act?
No, I never designed any jewelry then. No, I didn't. No.
When did that start?
Well, that started about 15, 16 years ago. I'd been in the work that we all do. There's a lot of traveling involved, and I was spending a lot of time doing theater work in London. And I had a little dog, a little Italian greyhound who looked like Bambi. And that's what the kids in the neighborhood called him when they took him for a walk. Bambi, he looked like Bambi. And when I came back, I was doing a play in London, and I came back, I looked at Sammy, that was my dog's name, and I thought 9 months is a long time out of his life. So, and I just adored this little guy. So I decided I was going to stay home and just be with Robbie. And that's exactly what I did. Didn't call an agent for work, nothing like that. I was going to be with Robbie. And then coincidentally, I don't remember how I discovered there were jewelry classes at Barnstall in Los Angeles. So I went there for classes and just loved the process of making jewelry. I mean, it was a much more very sort of beginner kind of course, but it really took over. And what I did was I have a freestanding garage that I turned into a studio, so I could work by myself, do the soldering, work with silver, and which I learned to do, and be with Sammy. You know, Sammy could come out and be with me whenever he wanted. So over a few years, without trying to, I had made quite a few pieces, and so I had what is called, I guess you could call a collection. And I got very friendly with people in the downtown jewelry district of Los Angeles and manufacturers there, and they put me in touch. Sorry for this very long story, but they put me in touch with the Japanese distributor, who liked my stuff and decided that he would sell it in Japan, which he's done, and that's been going on for few years. So I've had a little bit of success with the jewelry. I mean, so it became more than a hobby. And that's how that happened.
Do you like working most with gold, silver, platinum?
You know, in class, the teacher said, "Don't mess around with gold. You're just learning. Don't waste your money. Work on with." So I fell in love with silver. So far, I've done only silver, and I love silver. Could do things in gold, but I love silver.
Well, I would think that you would do platinum, since you certainly were involved with a platinum-selling record, the soundtrack of West Side Story, which, I mean, you were in every home in America. Seriously, that was #1 for over a year and was on the charts for 5 years, which was pretty amazing. All right, so you go to audition for the movie. Do you audition as Riff, or do you audition as Bernardo?
That's right. Yeah.
Both?
Well, I auditioned first for Riff and did it for a year and a half before the film became a reality.
But when you auditioned, which part were you interested in?
Well, I did my letter from United Artists asked me to pick a scene as Riff and a scene as Bernardo, so of course I did that. And then after we did that, maybe 6 or so weeks later, because first of all, the weeks went by, so others of us got to test that same day in London as well for their specific parts. One of them, by the way, was Ken Leroy, the original Bernardo, who was so amazing. So I just realized, watching this tonight, how much I learned from him. I've never thought of it before, but I should have. But so about 5 of us got letters from United Artists, and we drove out to Elstree Studios outside of London, and we did our respective tests in the course of a day. It was a great high, my God, you know, a film test.
Sure.
We went back into the show that night, and the weeks went by. We'd pass each other on the hallway. Have you heard anything? No, nobody heard anything for a number of weeks. And then finally I got the call from Jerry saying, "We liked your test, but we'd like to test you further." He didn't say for what. Could you get a week's leave of absence, which of course they gave me. I flew home and I tested as Bernardo with a lovely girl called Barbara Luna, who was a really hot contender for the role of Anita. I met Robert Wise for the first time. Jerry directed the test. Jerry, I owe my life to Jerome Robbins.
You know this is a Minority Report, right? I mean, speaking well of Jerome Robbins, you know, that doesn't happen very often. You know that, right?
No.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I was home for a week. I got to see my mother and my father and I got to see my family. Then I went back into the show as Riff again. It was so much fun to go back and forth that way. And then the weeks started to go by, and it took, I got a letter from Robert Wise saying, "We're sorry we haven't let you know anything, but we feel we have to cast the role of Maria before we cast her brother." So, and they finally did cast Maria before they cast Bernardo before they cast Maria because of time. So I got a telegram one day, about 6 or 7 weeks later, tell me I had the role of Bernardo in the movie, and that was an amazing day.
All right, now you're still acting with Ken Leroy every night, 8 performances a week.
Yeah.
And what's Ken Leroy's reaction when he finds out you're playing Bernardo?
You know, I don't know what his reaction was. Hey, if it was me, I would have been disappointed. So I imagine he might have felt some disappointment. You know,
Disappointment
but
is
I
a
never asked him
euphemism.
about it,
Yes,
so.
yeah, right. All right. So now, during the filming, were any of the creators around? I mean, Bernstein, Sondheim, Lawrence.
Arthur Lawrence was not there. He's the only one of that original group who was not part of the film. Stephen Sondheim was, of course, Jerry. Jerry was the only one who was there because he was co-directing with Robert Wise, so he was with us all the time.
Well, not all the time, right? I mean, because eventually.
Yeah, there was a point where Jerry was unbelievably fired, but thank goodness after we had done a good amount of the filming, so they had quite a bit of Jerry's work on film, and it was, I guess, sort of safe to let him go. The reason he was, I hate that word, fired, is because he's such a perfectionist with himself first, and he was just taking too much time. I remember Rita saying once about Jerry, she said it must have been so hard for him when they said cut and print, because then it was on to the next thing, because his imagination was endless. Being a perfectionist, he could always keep working on something forever, yeah.
Now, looking at you now, you seem a little more light-skinned than you do in the movie.
We all are. We all are. You know, I noticed even the Jets are darker than they are in real life. But yes, yeah. Well, what they needed to do for the film, and of course, Irene Sheriff had different color codes for the Jets and for the Sharks. But I've always, I remember the very first day of filming, it was that shot of me on against that red brick wall. Jerry was on the other side of the camera directing that, and at one point he said, "He's not dark enough," so they came up and made me a little darker. But I think it was important in the storytelling to know who you were looking at without anybody saying anything. Okay, that's a jet and that's a shark. That's a Puerto Rican. That's not. It's not. So I've always, I think I understood that because I'm sure it would be different now, but I've never had a problem with it when I watch it myself.
I guess if it were done now, you wouldn't get the part because they would cast a Latino in the role. That they would really go for the the actual ethnicity of the characters. Wouldn't you think that they would do that today if they were casting?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so today, where we have casting that is more realistic, I do think that they would cast a Latino. So you were at the right place at the right time.
Well, I guess. By the way, one of the things that I thought of while watching this, Anthony Quinn played Zorba the Greek. He was the perfect actor for that role. He was just beautiful in it. He's not Greek. He's partly Hispanic, as a matter of fact. So this thing of casting, I think, is I think we sort of make too much of it. Like, oh, they're not. We must have someone who's Latin. We must. You have to cast the right actor in the right role. That's what really matters to me, instead of a stereotypical kind of direction.
So did you get to be good using a switchblade? Can you do that?
Well, in the theater at night, I got pretty good at it. Yes, yeah. One time, I accidentally cut Leroy in the neck. So I wasn't so good all the time.
Did you make any lasting friendships in the movie, especially with the jet?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. We all have remained friends over the years. Robert Wise said, of all the movies that he ever made, and he made quite a few with tremendous film stars, that was the only movie where he had a relationship with the cast long after the film had been made. There was something about this movie that just we loved working. Sharing this experience was just such an amazing thing. We all loved what we were doing, and I think that sort of spilled over onto everybody on the set, not just the people in front of the camera, but everybody. So it was a very, very special bonding kind of experience.
All right, but here you are acting opposite Natalie Wood, who has been in movies now for well over a decade. She's a star. People know who she is.
Yeah.
And here you are having to play her stern brother. Was it tough for you to assume that role, saying, "Wait a minute, this is Natalie Wood, and here I am telling her what to do"?
No, 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 because we were acting, of course, and it was so easy to feel protective of her.
Uh-huh.
I could have done that in real life.
So we're told that she didn't quite get along with Richard. How do you pronounce his last name, by the way? Richard Beemer?
Yes, Beemer.
Beemer,
Yeah.
like
By the way,
BMWs?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yes. I hate to say anything that's even remotely not that. Natalie, this is, I've never heard this firsthand. This was rumor, so it's probably true, but who knows? That Natalie wanted either her husband, Robert Wagner, or Warren Beatty, that's to play Tony. She didn't like Richard. Not him personally, she just wanted someone else. She tried to get him replaced. I think she stayed sick for a couple of days, but that didn't work. So, of course, she had to play opposite Richard. And but I am told that she never spoke to him, and it was his first big movie, and he was basically working alone, really. But he's wonderful in it. But I think now, today, if we were talking tonight, she'd say, "I don't know why I did that. That was so stupid of me." And Richard would say, "Why didn't I speak to her?" He said that to me once. But these things happen, and everybody gets over it.
Okay. Now, when you were filming in what is now the Lincoln Center area of New York City, at the end of the day, did you guys ever walk around and run into a real gang of New York punks and who challenged you to a fight?
Yeah, well, they were around, absolutely. And
Real gang members.
real gang members, yes. And what the production really smartly did is they used these young guys to block off the streets and not let anyone come into the street who shouldn't be there. So it was really a smart way to get their help and to not have any trouble at the same time. Yeah.
If you can't lick 'em, join 'em. Yeah, I guess that's what that means. All right, the Rumble scene, was that much improvised? Was that choreographed down to the last step?
It's all choreographed. The Rumble is exactly as it always was in the theater. It's exactly the same routine, so to speak.
Now, that was a very hot summer in New York. You guys must have sweated a great deal.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I remember when I was playing Riff and we were rehearsing the Rumble, and I was told, get some pads for your hips. You're going to need it in rehearsal because you're going to be falling on your hips and so on. And I never got the pads. And I remember in London, after we opened, at night I had bruises, yellow, black, blue on both hips. And I would wake up at night because the stinging of it would wake me up. And that went away. But I should have gotten the pads. But yes, it was the smart thing is to wear pads, which I didn't do. So there.
Did you go through many costumes, many shirts, many pants? Did that happen a great deal?
No.
No. Okay, fine. All right. Now it's time for awards season.
Okay.
And do you remember where you were when you heard that you were nominated for an Oscar?
The first time I heard West Side Story was the Royal Film film for the Queen in London in 1962. I think in March, and Robert Wise and Richard and Russ and I all went over for this. It was a really big evening, with the Queen.
Sure.
Lots of important people there. And it was during the intermission. You started the intermission here, but there was an intermission. And during the intermission, Robert Wise was on the phone to the West Coast, and he told me during that intermission that I'd been nominated for,
All right. Now, before the Oscars came the Golden Globes, and you won one of those, too.
I did, yeah.
Did you go to the ceremony?
There was a much quieter ceremony.
Yes,
at that
they were
time.
in those days.
Yeah, it's not like it is now.
Right.
But it was still a great thing.
All right. Now, here you are. You've won the Golden Globe.
Right.
Are you saying to yourself, I've got the Oscar. I'm going to win the Oscar now. I mean, they gave me the Golden Globe. I mean, I'm a shoo-in. I'm a contender. What did you think?
I never said that to myself because I never thought that way. I mean, I was so naive. I just I thought like a typical dancer, what's my next job going to be? You know,
And you had formidable competition for the Oscars. I mean, really, you were the new kid on the block, because there was Peter Falk, and he had basically a cameo in Pocketful of Miracles.
Really strong year in the female category as well.
Sure.
Yeah, there's some wonderful movies that year.
Yeah.
Judgment at Nuremberg.
The Hustler. The Hustler.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. It was,
And that's who you're up against. You're up Montgomery Clift.
I think I got lucky because West Side was such a fantastic success that all of us in it benefited from just this movie. It's such a beautiful movie.
It sure is, which we learned again tonight. So
So I never thought that Oscar thing. I never thought I went to the awards, but it was nice to be there. But my head was in the clouds. I wasn't very smart.
all right, well, I watched on YouTube today the actual ceremony, and there's Shirley Jones saying the nominees are, and then she takes so long to get the envelope, to open the envelope, to read what's in the envelope to herself. I counted 12 seconds. That was a long time for you, wasn't it, those 12 seconds?
Well, it didn't seem like a long time. It seemed like a long time to me when I watched an awards season now. You know, it's taking forever. But it didn't. I guess it did feel like a long time, come to think of it. Yeah, it's like you just wanted to get off the stage. Just get out.
So when you won and your acceptance speech was astonishingly short, does that mean you didn't have one prepared?
No, I didn't. It just wasn't thinking of any of that. So of course I had nothing prepared. I didn't think anything would happen. So I didn't have anything prepared. It was a surprise. It was a whole total surprise.
Now, the irony is when you win and you go to the stage, and when Rita Moreno won and went to the stage, the orchestra is playing Maria.
Oh, okay.
Now, under those circumstances, very interesting that neither Natalie Wood nor Richard Beemer were nominated. And was that surprising to you?
Well, you know, that year was Splendor in the Grass came out, I think, that same year.
Uh-huh.
And I think Natalie may have been nominated for that. And somehow that blurred over into not working for West. I'm not sure how that happened. But and she's so beautiful in West Side Story and Splendor in the Grass. But is that what you asked me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Now, here you are tonight for this wonderful charity.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved with this?
I'm sorry?
How did you get involved with this charity?
Okay. Well, I have a website for my jewelry, and a couple of years ago, through the jewelry, I somehow got connected with this wonderful young girl, Isabel Kluver. And the way we found each other was in her school when she was 13 or 14. They did a production of Romeo and Juliet and West Side Story. And she had never seen the film before. And when she saw the film, she loved the movie and she loved Bernardo. So we had to meet. And we did a couple of years ago. We've become very, very, very good friends. And Isabel was born with Charge syndrome, which is a syndrome that affects children from 1 out of every 9,000 to 10,000 kids, if I've got that right. Isabel is now 16. She's gone through 30 some odd procedures for her health. Kids with Charge syndrome, it's a very complicated syndrome. They can be born blind, deaf, all kinds of problems that are very, very, very difficult to solve. And but I've met Isabel, and she's here tonight, and she's just an extraordinary young girl. She's 16. She composes, she plays the guitar, she's a musician, she's talented, she's so alive, she's so smart, and she's a real achiever. And evidently that's something that's really, I learned is common with kids who have Charge syndrome, because they're born with huge things to overcome. Anyway, but I got involved because I loved this young girl so much, and that's how I came involved. Yeah.
Is Isabel right here, right now? Isabel, are you here? Can we have you stand? No. Well, we're going to introduce some people who work with Charge. You're going to introduce them now, aren't you? The two nice people who are going to come out here?
Say that again?
You're going to introduce the two people who are connected with Charge?
Oh, well, here's Isabel coming now.
Oh, good.
And they're going to stay there. I guess they're not coming up.
All right.
Okay, so over here is Isabel with the blue purse, and next to her is her wonderful mother, Yara. And so we've introduced them. There you are. There they are. Hi, Isabel.
Hi.
So what will we ask you? What should we ask you? Why don't you talk about how Charge syndrome has been for you, what you've been through?
Like I said, I've gone under like 30 surgeries, and just first one I had was when I was just a few weeks old, and just it's hard, but it's great to like just have this experience, and to like I'm glad that I'm still here, because I went through some pretty life-threatening events when I was in the NICU and when I was a baby, and it's sometimes a little hard. Sometimes I can feel down about Charge, and I'll listen to music, I'll play guitar, I'll write songs, I'll watch movies like West Side Story, watch stuff, and I'll just sometimes just think about it's tough, but just you gotta hold on, because it will get better. And, I'll just realize that, I really am, here for a reason. And even though I can sometimes feel like, maybe I was, like, sort of, I was born sort of, I don't know how to put it, but just kind of, I don't know, just feel useless sometimes. Just feel like I was not meant to be born because I have this syndrome. And so I 4 years ago, we have these Charge conferences every 2 years in different places, and in Florida, in 2011, I met another individual with Charge. Her name is Claire, and we became really good friends. And she's my best friend. She lives in Cleveland, Ohio, and we Skype and we text and we just talk on the phone, and we go visit every time we have break or something. And it's just great that I have that friend, and I met a lot of more friends just throughout all these conferences. And we're hoping so there was one this past year, and then 2 years later we're hoping to bring George to the next conference, and we will have stuff about Chakiris for Charge. And I actually got this idea of maybe screening West Side Story. That would be pretty cool. So yeah.
So anyway,
but yeah.
We're very proud of
we've
you.
become really good friends. And, thank you, Isabel. And she's a real. She really accomplishes so much, and with her talent, with her as a musician, she's a writer, and so we can see with Isabel how incredibly she's done. She has really incredible, and her mother Yara. Yara is so fantastic. They're like sisters. I mean, the communication between the two of them is so awesome and so wonderful to see. It really is. Yeah. Thank you, Yara, and thank you, Isabel.
And I just wanted to say that we are taking donations for the Charge Syndrome Foundation. We have a website that we designed called Chakiris for Charge Syndrome. I have cards out there for you to take, and you can make donations online. We have a line of products also with a logo that says, "I've got the Chakiris chill." And I just wanted to explain that because it was based on a conversation that we had when all this Bieber fever stuff was going on. And I just said, who needs Bieber fever? And we both were like, we've got the Chakiris chill, you know. So that those are the products. There are also some products that have artwork by Isabel on it. There are brochures out there with more information about Charge syndrome as well. George, you did a great job explaining it, so thank you for that. But yeah, there is more information out there, and we very much appreciate your coming to the screening and supporting this cause. And thank you, George, as well for being here. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Before,
Isabel. Thank you.
before we go, are there any questions from people in the audience who'd like to ask George Chakiris questions that they've had since they were first viewers of West Side Story? Here's one right here.
We're going to actually ask that you use the mic, but
Okay.
I'm just curious how a young boy in the 50s growing up in Ohio from immigrant parents got involved in musical theater and dance.
How did you get involved with musical theater and dance in the 50s when not that many boys were doing it?
Well, I'll tell you, as a kid, I grew up, I loved movies. I didn't know theater existed, but I went to movies all the time. And I guess my favorite movies were the musicals. So I fell in love with those people dancing. And one of my sisters loved dancing as much as I did, so we were always dancing together in the living room. But in school, when I was in high school, I learned of an incredible dancing school in Hollywood. I'll say Hollywood instead of Los Angeles because that's what we said then. The American School of Dance. And all the great ballet companies, when they were in Los Angeles, that's where they took class when they were in Los Angeles. Famous film stars, Leslie Caron, Sid Charisse took class there. Well, that's all I had to hear. So I watched a professional class there one morning. Nobody famous in class, but I knew that I had to go to take class there. So I got a job at the May Company downtown, worked during the day as an office boy in the advertising department, and took class every night. So that's how I got started. It was just a lucky thing to hear about, and it got me on the right path, I guess.
You do know that George was one of the backup dancers in Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Yeah.
Was Marilyn
Yes.
Was Marilyn Monroe nice to you?
Well, I'll tell you, she was very quiet. She didn't talk to anybody. Not that she was rude, none of that. She was so concentrated on her work that when they called cut for any reason, she never looked in the mirror. She didn't go to her dress. I know she went right back to her starting position to start again. I understand that she was quite a perfectionist as well. But she was kind of extraordinary, wasn't she? Really, a presence on the screen, unlike anything we've ever seen. Yeah.
Yes, I have to admit that when I've watched The Number, I've never been able to find you in it because I'm watching her.
But exactly,
Other questions? Anybody else have a question? Here's one over here.
Hi. What was your favorite dance number, and how did Jerome Robbins go about directing you and choreographing it?
Your favorite dance number in West Side Story, and how did Jerome Robbins go about choreographing it?
I don't know how we went about choreographing things because they were already choreographed before we got there.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
I have, I always say, I usually say the American number because we had such a wonderful time. It's such a lovely number. It really is so spirited and so much fun between the guys and the girls. But Cool is just an amazing number, and the way it's filmed, the way it's edited. And one of the beautiful things about all of this, and Cool is a really good example of it, because in this dance number, we know how people feel. That's the beauty of, I think, of this piece in Jerry Robbins' work. Normally in a musical, the scene goes up to here, and then they stop for a musical number, and then the scene picks up where they left off. That doesn't happen with West Side. All the musical numbers, singing or dance, are dialogue. The story keeps going. But anyway, so the American number, my God, Cool. They're all beautiful. I Feel Pretty. They're also wonderful. But I guess the two strong ones for me would be the American number and Cool. Yeah.
Which, of course, you did in London. You did Cool in London.
Yeah, Riff. It was very different from this.
Right.
But Riff does cool with the Jets in the first act.
Now, you might be saying, wait a minute, wait. How could it be that Riff would do Cool since he was dead when Cool happened?
Yeah.
But in the stage play, Officer Krupke and Cool are reversed, right?
They are, and the sequence of the way they do it in the films is much better, really, because after the rumble and two guys are dead, doesn't make sense for the guys to be having fun singing Officer Krupke. It makes much more sense to sing Cool, and because they're all ready to bust like hot water pipes and so on. And Tucker Smith, who so beautifully plays Ice and sings Cool, really keeps them contained and calm and cool and tight. The feeling isn't gone, but he said, if you want to live in this lousy world, stay cool, keep cool, keep cool. And it's so rich in texture and feeling.
And he shows us that he's going to be a good leader, too, which is really very nice. Yeah. Other questions?
Kevin's got some over there.
Hi, I'm curious to know more about the relationship between the choreography and the camera, how that worked together.
The choreography and the camera. For example, the movie of Chicago is famous for having lots of quick cuts. In this era, we didn't have quick cuts with choreography. Yeah. So were the numbers pretty much done as is? Were there very few?
They were done as is, and then Robert Wise, as you can see with Cool, I mean, there were a number of different camera angles, but the editing was, I'll say, a little, MTV came after this, and MTV sort of got into all that quick cutting because nobody really did anything. They were promoting a record. So a girl could be coming out of the water, or she wouldn't have to do anything but to promote the record. So that's how I think all this quick editing started. And now we're also accustomed to it, that something's wrong if it doesn't go that fast. But I think this film and films prior to that, where you could actually see people dance and not have it interrupted by too much editing, I think is a good thing. But so the numbers were filled not from beginning to end, but section by section, because they knew pretty much where they would want to edit. So we never did anything beginning to end. We did sections, and then they edited with the sections that they had filmed. They knew how they wanted to put it together. And by the way, in the great movie musicals, with Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, and they always knew when they were choreographing a number exactly where they wanted that. What section of the movement would be from this angle, and then this angle, and so on. That was all worked out before they ever filmed. So they knew what they wanted that number to look like. Jack Cole, who choreographed Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, he was a master at filming dance and editing it and putting it together. But nobody did a complete number from beginning to end. Gene Kelly never did. No one ever did that. They knew what they wanted that number to look like before they started filming. And I think now the field is kind of open to, well, let's do this, let's do that. And then they decide, after it's filmed, how they might put it together. And sometimes it works, and I thought it worked really nice in Chicago, because that's where we're used to that, and I thought it really worked really well.
Good. Anybody else? Right here. Whoop. We're going to use the mic.
When you did West Side Story in London, since it wasn't the first West Side Story, Broadway had preceded it, did Jerome Robbins keep the Jets and the Sharks separate in rehearsal?
I'm sorry.
All right, so the famous story about West Side Story is when Jerome Robbins was first putting it up in New York in 1957, the Jets had to stay alone, the Sharks had to stay alone, anybody's couldn't be with either group. She had to eat her lunch alone, all that. Did that happen in the London production as well?
It did, because we rehearsed here in New York. First day of filming, we all sat in a circle around Jerry, and that's exactly what he said. I want the Sharks to stay over here. I want the Jets to stay over there. Not even during a coffee break, not after work. He didn't want anybody to socialize with anybody. And I think his reason was a very good reason, because this is a group of young people. He wanted to create the tension that is really necessary for this story and to have between these gangs. If you see it, I've seen theater productions where the tension is not there and something is missing. But Jerry absolutely made that a prerequisite, made that happen by asking us, everybody, to separate themselves that way, and it really worked. It was good. Yeah.
Right down here.
Thanks. Well, as a follow-up to that, I asked pretty well this question last night when I learned for the first time that you played Riff in London before you played Bernardo in the film. How is it then? How did you psychologically and as an actor professionally manage to... You played both sides. Jerry Robbins didn't get his wish with you. You switched sides. You got to eat at the other side's lunch table. How did you do it? How were you able to embody Bernardo after you had been hating his guts?
Well, you know, I really loved Bernardo. I really empathized with somebody who's looked on badly, and I remember in school, when I was in high school, I went to, you know, in high school then it was pretty different to what it's like from the schools we can see now. But I always felt badly for kids who were not part of the group, somebody who was not asked to be in a fraternity and all that stupid stuff. But I always felt a kind of empathy for anybody who was, quote unquote, a kind of an underdog in any kind of situation. So that's one of the things that I've felt about Bernardo, and I thought he could be the outcast here, so to speak, because he and his family come to this country, and the dialogue says, who got me the first day I got here? So it was easy for me to personalize that and sympathize with it, and I loved doing that. Having that role. Also, I got to watch Ken Leroy for a year and a half, so I could draw on some of the things I learned from him as well. He was fantastic. So it wasn't a huge jump for me at all. It was a kind of a natural, nice move that I was fortunate to be able to make. You know,
Do you prefer Riff, having played both? Do you prefer having played Riff or Bernardo?
I probably Bernardo. I think I'm more. Let's see. If I was in the theater version, how would I feel about playing Riff? Well, first of all, I'd be too old. But no,
Doc is still available. You know, so.
But well, I'll tell you, in the theater version, Riff is a slightly better role than Bernardo. Okay. In the film version, because the guys get to be in the American number and so on, the role of Bernardo is enhanced a bit. So in the theater version, if you play Riff, you're better off than if you play Bernardo. But in the film version, we got very lucky with how it was adapted for the screen.
Good. Well, we have to say thank you to George Chakiris, who is a great actor, a great singer, a great dancer, and as we've learned, a great humanitarian. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.